Recently was employed, or actually was one of the founders of Challenge Games here in Austin, was one of the lead developers of Duels, among other things, and now has his own company. Please welcome Christian Primozich. Thank you.
So, who here has heard of social gaming? And who here works in the social gaming industry? Okay, there's a few people. And so that's where I've spent most of my time for the last 4 years. As John mentioned, I've spent several years at Challenge Games, and we sort of started doing web-based gaming before it became this internet phenomenon that now pervades the social networks. And a metrics-driven approach is sort of what has come out of the social gaming space, and I think that it's probably going to work its way into the traditional gaming space, even though traditional game development has been a very creative process. And so, a little bit about what I've done in the last 15 years or so. I started at Origin Systems. It's sort of where I cut my chops. I know some people in the room from that experience. It was amazing. It was sort of in Origin's heyday. And then I spent about 10 years at some high-tech startups, some dot-coms, did some consulting, mostly around web technologies, and the web space, I think, sort of pioneered really doing things based on metrics and analysis and that type of work. And so the juxtaposition of social networks and gaming has sort of married those two concepts and has really made for some profound companies like Zynga, for example, which acquired Challenge Games earlier this year. So there's no more Challenge Games, and that's rather unfortunate, although Duels.com still exists. And you can go to duels.com and play it. For now, I really don't know how long it's going to be around. In April I left, I started a company called Microtalks, and I love the concept of game jams. Blake, you did a great presentation. I haven't ever done one, to be honest, other than in my own apartment. And so I sort of feel like that's how I turned out some of these games. And so Big Top Life was my first game. I built that with some help from some contractors in about 3 months. Fish Feeder was my second game. I built that in about a week with some help from a guy named Ian Bagost. He didn't actually help me, but I sort of stole his idea. And so he's a super smart guy. I love reading what he has to write. If you don't follow him on Twitter and you're on Twitter, you need to check him out. And right now I'm working on a game called Chronicles of Heron Vale, which will be my biggest project, and hopefully be something a little different on the social networks. I've got some guys who work in the industry helping me with that. Some amazing artists, a great writer, and so that's what I'm currently working on. So the thing about taking a metrics-driven approach is typically you have to start with some data. And in the traditional gaming industry, you put a package together and put it on a shelf, and then you're sort of done with it. And so back when I was at Origin, we had things go gold, and they went off to get duped, and that was it. We moved on. I forget who, but somebody talked about how there's sort of the soft time. I think maybe it was Blake. And that's what happens when you ship a product, right? And so the exact opposite happens online, right? For example, when we ship Duels, myself and one other developer spend approximately the next 72 hours fixing bugs, dealing with issues on the site. We got featured on TechCrunch, and basically that torched our servers, and we were trying to figure out how to bring more servers online, optimize code, those sorts of things. And so, but it's a good problem because you've got tons of users, tons of data, and so the traditional web brings with it a lot of analytics. Google Analytics is probably the most well-known, and you can find out sort of how many people are hitting your site, how many unique players you've got, where they're coming from geographically, how much time they're spending on the site, things like that. And so you build a game on top of the web, and then you've got a bunch of game-specific data. And so with Duels, for example, we had hundreds of thousands of battles being fought every day, everything from trades to quests, purchases. It was all virtual goods. That was our revenue model. And so then you take that web-based game and you throw it inside a social network, and then you've got even more metrics to deal with. And so you've got things like invites, the K factor, which is a representation of the virality of the game, how well it spreads, stream post gifts, all these additional metrics that you've got to deal with. And so at Challenge Games, before I left, I was getting 20+ page reports on a daily basis describing a lot of these different things, and that was just for one game. And so all of the studio leads and producers would get these reports, and it just ended up, it was a lot of data to sort of digest, and I think we sort of took the approach that a lot of companies take, where we should track this stuff, and then we'll figure out what to do with it. And so there's a better way to do it, and I think some of the leading companies in the industry are doing it now. And so this is